What I'm about to tell you is a true horror story, but it happened in the world of insects. Have you ever wondered what would happen if a group of ants got trapped in an abandoned nuclear bunker from the Cold War era? How did those ants manage to survive? And what harsh conditions did they endure? What happened was that in Poland, there was a Soviet bunker, one of the Soviet Union's nuclear shelters, built underground during the Cold War. After the Soviet Union collapsed, the bunker was abandoned and no longer used. A group of researchers discovered inside it a complete colony of wood ants. The bunker was underground, covered by trees for camouflage, extremely cold and dark. The authorities had sealed the place off, declaring entry illegal. The area and forests surrounding the bunker were home to a species of ants called wood ants. These ants had built their nest above the upper part of the bunker's vertical ventilation pipe. At that time, many ants would fall into the bunker through that pipe or the ventilation hole in the ceiling. Once they fell, they couldn't climb back out. Imagine it like this. The ceiling of the bunker had a ventilation hole at the top center, and the group of ants on the upper left side kept trying to climb out. But every time they moved along the ceiling, they fell back to the ground. Eventually, they became trapped forever in that place. But that didn't stop the ants from doing what they do best: building nests. About 50 years after the bunker was sealed, a group of researchers entered it, wanting to understand how the ants had managed to live inside. They found that the ants still alive had collected the dead ones into mass graves. These graves were located away from the main nest to keep it clean and prevent disease, something that is typical ant behavior. However, the researchers noticed that all the ants inside the bunker were worker ants. There was no queen among them, no winged ants, and no larvae of any kind. They were living under extremely harsh conditions, with nothing to eat. The researchers were astonished. How could these ants survive without any food source? In reality, wood ants don't eat wood. They feed on the waste secreted by aphids, tiny insects that feed on tree sap. But there were no aphids at all in the underground bunker. When the researchers examined the dead ants found in the graves, they discovered that the ants had been eating each other. This wasn't entirely surprising, since the ants had no other option to stay alive. Normally, social insects like ants never eat members of their own species, except for wood ants. Wood ants sometimes eat their own kind. Every spring, after the winter dormancy, colonies of wood ants emerge into the forest. When they encounter other colonies, massive battles occur, known as ant wars. The ants kill each other en masse, then feed on the bodies of the dead. This not only expands the victorious colony's territory, but also provides food from the bodies of their enemies. So, the idea of wood ants eating one another is natural. But what's unnatural is that ants would eat members of their own colony in isolation. And that is exactly what the researchers found inside the bunker. The living ants had eaten the bodies of the dead ants in order to survive. After discovering this, the researchers placed a wooden pole in the middle of the bunker, connecting the floor with the ventilation opening above. This allowed the trapped ants to climb back up through the same hole they had fallen from and return to their colony in the forest above ground. What happened to the ants is similar to a well-known human story. about a group of passengers whose plane crashed in a snowy mountain region. The survivors, with no food available, were forced to eat the bodies of those who had died in order to stay alive. This real story was adapted into a film now streaming on Netflix titled Society of the Snow. So now the question is, if you ever found yourself trapped in a place with no food, surrounded only by human corpses, would you be able to eat them to stay alive? Or would you rather die of hunger than do something like that? And imagine, those you might have to eat could be the people closest to you. Think about it, and don't forget to share your answer in the comments below the video.